My name's Steve K5ATA. I am the Education and Learning Manager for ARRL. Started that job in September. Before that, taught school for 21 years and had a bunch of kids earn their licenses, and some of them we had some experiences learning what not to do with kids, which we're going to share with you today. Most recently, the last 3 years, about 60 folks. And we're blessed today to have Chief Padawan Cody. Cody, stand up and wave. No, you got to stand up. Stand up. So Cody is kind of the one that took it by far the best and ran with it. He earned his extra class license. In fact, he is presenting for the Carol Perry Forum tomorrow at 9. What room? Room number 2. Room number 2. So tomorrow morning at 9. Go, give Cody some props. Thank you to Josh, Ham Radio Crash Course as well. He's helping me with filming this. Thank you, sir. And if you don't watch Josh, you need to. I don't know what's wrong with you. So this is all about youth outreach and how to get kids involved. And I think the first thing that we need to understand is that kids can do hard stuff. And believe it or not, kids like to do hard stuff when it's hard stuff that matters. Most of them probably don't mind doing something that they would consider difficult or hard if it's something that the outcome is really, really cool. Okay? And I'll use Cody as an example again because he built his own log cabin, like the logs, like cut them down, chinked it and everything. How long did that take you? Like 3 years. 3 years. And now he's going to put a tower outside of it. Because, we hooked him into another one. So kids like to do hard stuff. So as soon as we get our heads wrapped around that, the rest of this becomes a lot easier. Okay, but first we're going to have a little survey. I'm going to go ahead and warn you now, this is a little bit different than your typical ARRL forum. You're going to actually have to talk to each other a little bit. But it'll be okay. Raise your hand if you love amateur radio. This is me. See, we have a couple non-believers still, but they're young. We have time. If you were introduced to amateur radio at and I put it in quotes on, young age, okay, and I'm going to have another quick little survey here. Who in here thinks they were introduced at the youngest age in the room? Okay, how young? 4.5. That's pretty stinking young. Okay, when did you get licensed?
1968.
How old were you then?
I was 14.
Okay, so it's not that different from my kiddo. Jerica started helping me with putting pins in maps and stuff probably when she was about 5. And about 14 or 15? 14 or 15, she got her technician, took her out doing some stuff, and then, well, that's the story for later in there. If you've ever gone to a school to encourage them to include amateur radio in their program, levante su mano, raise your hand. Is that you? Yes? No? If not, it should be, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that, and I'm going to help you do it in a minute. Okay? If you've actively worked to engage youth in amateur radio anywhere, be it in church, be it scouts, be it at your house with your young'uns, okay? And the last one everybody gets to answer probably, if you were ever a kid, raise your hand because everybody wants to. Well, then it counts because you were a kid yesterday too. So, all right, first thing, and my reading has changed significantly in the last 8 months because, well, I've got a new role in life. And I've been reading a lot of this guy, Simon Sinek. And he says, all organizations start with why, but only the great ones keep their why clear year after year. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, ARRL has not historically done the best job of keeping focused on getting youth involved. Okay? If you look back over the years, it's ebbed and flowed and ebbed and flowed. But we're fortunate, the new CEO, he's a firm believer that we need to engage kids and we need to get them into the hobby, but he's also a firm believer of reaching out to all hams, no matter what age, or prospective hams. So you need to kind of come up with what's your why, okay? So before we start delving into how to reach and engage youth, you have to define why. Why is it important to you that we engage them? Now, every time you see this little TPS, that means that's a think, pair, share moment, which means you actually have to talk to people around you for a minute and come up with some ideas as to why. And then my lovely bride's over here, she's going to write down some of your ideas for you. So we're going to give you a minute or two to talk with the people around you and come up with why you think it's important that we reach out and engage youth in amateur radio. And for those of you who aren't used to talking to people, I promise it'll be okay. I've done this in school for 21 years. 12-year-olds can do it. We can make this. So why is it important that we should engage youth in amateur radio? So just, you don't have to know the person next to you. It's okay. Turn around. They might even share their ice cream. Okay? Well, okay, they might not share their ice cream. And don't mind if Josh comes around and he's kind of like, you know, being nosy with a camera and a microphone. We like that stuff.
I have my own mic now.
I'll tell him. You're going to have a chance to tell me in a minute.
We're not getting any younger.
We're not getting any younger. Yes, that is true.
And we'll go ahead and bring that to a close. But first I have a question. Young man right there. How old are you? Hold on, everybody. Woo, if you give me a second. How old are you?
17.
Are you licensed?
Yes, sir.
When did you get your license?
2 months ago.
2 months ago. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you, who first exposed you to amateur radio?
My uncle.
Your uncle. Okay. And what did he do? I mean, just give me a little idea. What did he do?
He would do it. I'd sit there with him, and he'd talk to people on the radio, and then I thought it was interesting. So then I studied for 8 months, and then went and took mine.
Very cool. Have you gotten a radio of your own yet? Mm-hmm. What do you have?
Got a Jesus. Then I got a Bofang. He gave me both of those handhelds. Then in my truck, I got an Icom 5100 and then a Larson 270B.
You're doing okay, brother. Okay, so what class of license are you?
Amateur extra.
Oh. Congratulations.
Okay. Impressive. Cody, make friends. He's an extra as well. So where do you live?
Lynchburg, Virginia.
That's a little far, but you know, it's not a bad hop. You can do that at night. Okay, so anybody else? Let's go around the room a little. Who had some ideas that you came up with? What is your reason for why? Why do we need to get kids involved?
Put your hand up so I can walk over.
They love STEM.
They love STEM. Okay, and for those of you who don't know
love
STEM,
STEM.
science, technology, engineering, and math, some schools put an A in the middle of it and call it STEAM. Okay, if you're kind of one of those artsy people.
Well, I'm getting kids involved because I'm involved in a movement called Repair Cafe, where we fix stuff for people for free, and some of it's electronic. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a ham license, but if they have an exposure to electronics, there's a chance that they can learn to fix stuff and keep stuff out of the landfill. So it's from a green standpoint.
Very cool. That's cool.
it's,
And if you don't mind, when Josh comes around with the microphone, if you have a call sign, go ahead and throw your call sign out there for us as well.
W2GIO.
Okay, so, okay. Yeah, I don't have a wireless. That's for our recording here. So he said he's involved with, what was the name of it?
Repair Cafe.
Repair Cafe, where they refurbish old electronics and...
K0BHJ, it's a way to keep the hobby alive because we're not getting any younger. And that's the way it's going to have to be, is we're going to replace ourselves.
So,
It seems like it's inevitable.
Yeah. we are not getting any younger. I realized that at 3 o'clock in the morning when my alarm went off for me to go to Memphis and get on an airplane to get here in time because my kid graduated yesterday. If anything makes you start to feel older, it's when child unit graduates high school and you're like trying to be a man and suck the tears. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. But I made it. Okay. Anybody else?
For me, there's been a magic in amateur radio. I still think it's miraculous when you can put 100 watts into a wire and move electrons around in a wire in Europe or Japan.
Amen. And for those of you who didn't hear, he said there's a bit of a magic element to it.
And when there are a few kids for whom that is magic, and you like to see that magic happen.
Those of you coming in, if you don't mind, find a spot that's actually close to somebody else because this is like a group activity. We kind of
Nice
chit-chat.
radio, by the way. That's one of my favorites.
I've had my afternoon quick dose of coffee, so I'm good.
In the back? Okay. Did you have one more?
Yeah, I have one more. W2GIO.
I'll move the mic. You just
Okay,
talk.
good. I mentor a kid, and he's now 21 years old. I started when he was 16. He's Asperger's, so he has some disability with communications. So I had him build a radio kit, and I had him get involved in the Repair Cafe movement, and I'm trying to slowly get him interested in ham radio. But it's the idea is that it required me to be involved in his life, and that's the mentoring part of it, which I had been mentored too. So I think that's one of the important parts of us being able to mentor kids.
Very cool. And then last one in the back, then we'll roll forward.
up. Okay.
I promise. There's more think, pair, share times. But you know what? They've already told me that if I run over, I tend to get a little bit churchy in some of these things because sometimes I'd start rolling, and next thing you know, like, you were supposed to be done an hour ago.
Kilo Oscar 4, Sierra Whiskey Bravo, stroke AG. Keith,
Congratulations, upgraded.
One of the, I was a college faculty for 10 years. One of the things that I see, especially in the younger generation coming up, is they don't know anything outside of the internet. And the internet, particularly with social media and other things, tends to be very socially isolating. Radio is by definition a community hobby, and that can get young people not just on the air and talking to people, but also involved in, your local amateur radio club, finding an Elmer, learning things from, the generation, and that's one of the most important things. If you want to keep it, you have to give it away. And so we as older hams have to bring people into the hobby to pass on what we've learned to them.
Very cool.
Well said.
The same fella has another quote that I didn't really hit home with until I started this new job, and then all of a sudden, I had 4 jobs before. I taught, I drove a bus, I coached kind of football. I didn't really coach football, I was really the video guy. And then I did some consulting work for ARRL. All 4 jobs, I now work more hours a week doing what I do now than I did for all 4 jobs combined before. Okay? However, the same guy says, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress, but when you're working hard for something we love, it's called a passion. Okay? And that's where I'm at. I have a passion for this, and this is what we're going to do. I do what I do for the kids, not for us. I don't do it for myself. I don't do it for you. I don't do it for the hobby as a whole. Okay? I do it for the kids because it's that magic. Okay? When the kids, and you're not going to get them all, but when you bring amateur radio to a kid and they start making some of these connections and they start saying, whoa, I can put 100 watts, or Adam in the back would say 100 watts, what are you doing? Use 5. Okay? And you can move electrons in Japan and talk to people. That's when kids really start to grow with it. Once they grab it, that's when the growth happens. Okay? So that's my why. Your why doesn't have to be my why. I don't care. That's fine. As long as you're out trying to get more youth and engage them in the hobby, that's cool. Just know what it is that drives you first. Because if you're passionate about it, there's no stress in there. So one thing we know about is that youth, they want to belong to something, especially middle school kids. I taught middle school for 9 years, and elementary school before that. So kids want to belong to something, okay? And as soon as they get a club they can belong to that they fit in, they find their people, they're hooked at that point. Okay, so kids want to belong to something. Kids are going to bounce around from activity to activity. Okay, they change hobbies like I change socks at least once every 2 weeks. All right, they do it. Okay, you know that, you expect it. The best thing we can do is give them the ability to come back to it. Okay, there shouldn't be any stigma of, oh, you left for a while. No, they want to come back to it, that's perfectly fine. Let them back, invite them back. And like I said, when they find their crew, by the way, this is a new laser pointer, so if I point it too much, it's because it's fun. And I've had caffeine now. When they find their crew and engage, that's when their growth starts to take off and they start learning from each other. Okay? When you get kids in your classroom who are teaching other kids how to make a roll-up J-pole antenna. Okay? Or after I left my old classroom in the hands of another teacher, and when he has to call the kid over to show him how to do stuff. Okay? That's where it's at, right there. Create a space for youth. They have to have a space that's theirs. Okay, they need to own that space. In my classroom, I had, 4 tables? They were a hot mess all the time. I mean, there's wire and stuff everywhere, but it was their space. Okay, they could go over. I mean, some of them would just solder whatever they wanted to work on, they could work on. But you need to teach them to be responsible for it. The first time somebody left a soldering iron on and it burned through the power cord, they learned that lesson. Okay, then I made them solder it back together because, by golly, those are expensive. Okay, so teach them to be responsible. Make sure that there are several areas of the space that for the different aspects of amateur radio. Some people like to build. Some people want to talk on the radio. Some people, I even had a little 3D printer over there that finally started working near the end of the year again. Okay, but create a space that goes for any of them. And we never got all the way through everything we were trying to do. I'm hoping that continues on, but have that space for, FT8 or whatever digital mode you want to do. Keep but have several areas that the kids can go to and work on. Licensing, this is another think, pair, share kind of moment. All right, and before you do, I'm going to go ahead and point out that's 2006 picture. So if that picture looks a little bit grainy, it's because this was a picture that we took, and then she took a picture of a picture so I could get it on here. And then I have a story about it. So just real quickly, amongst yourself, decide, should we pursue licensing with youth? Why or why not? Say, this is that time when you turn to talk to your buddy that's probably finished with their ice cream now. And come up with some ideas. Should we or should we not? And the important part is the why or why not. All right, if we could go ahead and bring those discussions to a close so we can kind of figure out where we stand with that. All right, so who came up with something? First of all, let's just do like a straw poll. Raise your hand if you say yes, we should pursue licensing with youth. All right, so raise your hand if you say nah, maybe not so much. Okay. And that's perfectly fine. We can disagree on things. And then how many of you are like Josh? You're like, okay. For a long time I was, but now I'm different, and I'll tell you why. Welcome. Let's go ahead and let's get some ideas. So who's got what? Why? Boom.
One thing,
Here and
in
then
many
there.
years of working with youth and pushing them towards license, I've learned that we've got to be okay with all of those we introduce amateur radio to. Not all will make the step towards licensing, but some or many will. And that we've got to be okay with that, because you don't know how many people come to our test sessions later on in life, and when you talk to them about who introduced you to amateur radio, they talk about a grandpa, a father, a next door neighbor, a parent, and they're now not youth, they're now older. So they were introduced, and later on, that fire still burned.
Very good.
Anthony, N8VOX. All the activities in the hobby, the test questions, it's a body of knowledge. It's something that can be assessed against. I mean, we're all assessed, right, for taking our licenses. And when it's the government, the FCC, it's like, it's not the teacher. You know what I mean? It's like they're aiming for another standard. And I experienced that myself back in 1983. At my high school, we actually had a radio station, and I got my FCC license. Now, you didn't have to take a test, but he made us take the former test they used to give to be able to be on the radio. And yeah, so it's something that can be assessed against, and at the same time, the knowledge is all out there. It can be tied into all the different
The
activities.
truth is out there too.
Yeah.
Fox and Moeller told me that.
Wes, W8WJB. So back a couple years ago now, we did a class, my daughter and I, in the park for a bunch of homeschoolers, right? And I did it, there was another guy who kind of organized it, and he said, oh, you got to push the test. You got to push the test. You make sure. But I will say that I organized the curriculum so that by the end of it, I knew that, there's maybe 10 homeschoolers. I knew that they weren't all going to get their license. So if I just pushed the test questions, I knew that they might have learned stuff that they weren't going to be able to use in life after that. So instead of focusing on like the test, we focused on learning electronics and theory and all of these, so that even if they didn't leave there with a license, they still left with some STEM knowledge, right? They knew more even if they didn't end up with a license, right? They still had, and now they understand how a radio, works. And so at the very least, they learned something from the experience. I feel like sometimes we focus too much on driving towards that license that we forget that you need to learn the concepts too.
Okay. Anybody else? This gentleman up here, Josh. Hold on one sec. There you
One more
go.
time that call sign.
K5QXJ. We've taught ham classes and probably have licensed maybe 50 to 75 kids. Very few of them are very active amateurs. We got our pass rate up to well over 50%, but they didn't pursue the hobby.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. So anybody else?
Kilo Delta 9 Whiskey Hotel Oscar. But what I was talking about in licensing is more as like a mentor thing, not necessarily pushing it completely, but like as a teacher roller is because I want to be a future teacher for PE. Like it's completely different, but the skills that you take with it can transfer into anywhere. So like it's a yes in a licensing direction, but maybe not necessarily the test part of it directly.
And how old are you?
I am 21.
21. And how old were you when you got licensed?
20.
20. And you are the same Kilo Delta 9 Whiskey Hotel Oscar that is a VE. Yeah, so see, kids can get involved at a young age and help, and she does. In fact, I think she sat on her general upgrade.
I did Cody as well for his
So,
general.
Okay, so don't think just because, you know, they're kids, they don't, she's a VE, I mean, I've been in a few of those sessions, she's in a bunch of them, okay? All right, last one, then we're gonna roll forward before they kick me out.
Okay, W2GIO. One of the things that I did with kids at my church was like a little study on, it was more biblical, but the project was how a flashlight works. And we had 15 kids, they all got a flashlight, and we were able to take the flashlight apart and had some wires and wire strippers, and we took the bulb out and made the bulb light up, and then we went on a blackboard and had them draw a schematic. Now this is second and third and fourth grade kids, and then, you know, put the flashlight back together and let your light shine. So there was an opportunity for them to get their hands into some very basic electronics. So knowing how a flashlight works gives them some, they were excited. I mean, the girls were just working at it like it was a great project. Like you were saying, you give them something that's a little bit of a challenge, and there they go.
And as long as it's cool. So, and I said I've got a little story to go with this one. Okay, yes, youth can engage as part of a club even when they're not licensed. Now, I fall pretty firmly in the camp now of getting kids licensed. And my reason for that is, I'll tell you in a second. All right, because for youth to fully engage, oops, sorry about that. For youth fully to engage in being able to pursue the hobby on their own, they need to have a license to do it on their own. Up until that point, they can go to school, they can do it in the club there, but, you know, our radio at school, we can't use it in the summer. They can't use it when they're on vacation for Christmas, stuff like that. So, I mean, there are some other options out there, but that's part of why I fall there. Now, my story with these three, and I say three, that young man didn't actually make it. He missed it by one, but he wanted in the picture, so I said, okay. These three, November 28th, 2005. They're fourth graders. They passed their test. You can see they're all thrilled. They're happy, okay? Started a radio club, got a grant from the local school foundation, had a radio set up. We were off, we were running. February, I found out I was moving to Mississippi. So I found, you know, I was like, okay, well, we just got this thing going. The school secretary, her husband was a ham, I assume he still is. And so I went to him, I said, hey, I've got these kids, and there were like 7 or 8 kids that were coming to the club meetings. Some were still studying. Okay, I said, hey, I need somebody to keep these kids engaged, keep them going. And he's like, oh, absolutely. I'll do that for you. Okay? Come to find out, didn't happen. The radios were no longer there the next school year. Okay? But didn't happen. All 3 of those kids, November 28th, 2015, who wants to guess what happened? Every one of their licenses expired. Okay? And it expired because I thought that I had somebody in place to engage them. He didn't do it. Okay? Which goes to, was it you that said very few of the youth actually engage in the hobby? A lot of them don't know how. That's where we are. Okay, we can test them, okay, but if somebody's not there to show them how to actually do something with it, and it's got to be something we'll talk about in a minute that they want to do, okay, we're spinning our wheels. So fishing. Licensing is kind of like fishing, okay? Sometimes if you hook a fish and the fish runs, eventually a good fisherman can reel that fish back in. A kid getting their license is kind of like setting that hook. Because when the kid runs, because remember, they change hobbies like I change underwear, they're going to run for a while. If they have a license, they no longer have to relearn or remember, you know, whatever, however they pass that test. They don't have to do that part again. They've got it. They can step right back into the hobby and roll with it. So that's why I view licensing as an important part of it. Because I know perfectly well a big chunk of them are, you know, the next year, football. And then it's going to be like, you know, whatever their next hobby is. But I want them to have that ability so that when they're like, oh, I want to do that again. Hey, look, there's that bell thing that guy gave me. Okay? They can come right back. And we're going to have to actually find ways to keep them engaged. So this is going to have to be a quick think, pair, share. How are we going to keep them engaged? Who's going to do it, and how are we going to do it? What activities are we going to use? So I'm going to give you like a minute and 38 seconds to talk about that with your neighbors. And about 10 more seconds to wrap up that conversation, and we're going to quickly go around the room and find out what we think. Okay, because this is where the rubber starts to meet the road. All right, so who's got some ideas? I got some people in the back first, then we're going to get back up here.
I'll let you handle it.
You have to be loud, be proud. Come on and make some noise, just like Lemonade Mouth.
Hey, this is Steve KM9G. How do we keep youth engaged? I think that we need to make it a game. We need to make it a contest. We need to make it fun. It's not work. I mean, we call it work when we work DX contacts, but it's fun. That's what we need to do.
Very good. Gamify it. There are a lot of people that want to gamify it. In fact, you guys kind of gamified that yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right.
FT8 off
Next
every
one.
Thursday.
I got a couple up here, and then I got this gentleman up here.
I'm coming.
Raise your hand so Josh knows where to stop.
Yep, you're good.
Scott, K8JNO. One thing, you know, we're Elmers, but an Elmer can be a mentor too. A lot of these kids may not have fathers at home too, but it can be mothers, fathers, women, men. But the thing is, help them with their homework. Does it have to be ham radio? And I think, you know, helping them and being there and paying attention leads to them wanting to do things that you like too, you know, so.
Very good. Mr. Vox.
Yep, N8VOX, Anthony, and that's my Elmer right there.
Did he help you with your homework?
Yes, he did. He did, yep. And I got a C. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
It's just about being there. It's just about being there, right?
That's right. No, so you mentioned the fishing thing. Well, I think if you're going to catch fish, you have to go where the fish are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because, and that could be, I was just telling the group here, like, not being the creepy old guy at the after-school thing or, you know, like that. But, I mean, it could be a church activity. It could be getting involved in maybe the library, a school activity, volunteering, and a number of things, but going where the youth are. And I like the idea of we mentioned a space. If they can come to that space not just for ham radio, but maybe they just need some help with math or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
Totally agree. And then he had one up here and then one over
hand?
there.
All right.
W2GIO. Well, probably everybody here remembers when they were a kid and they took something apart and how much of a lot of fun it was taking something apart. Mm-hmm. Well, that to me is one of the things that can pull a kid in is say, hey, let's take this apart. And I actually have a kid that I brought when he had a ninth birthday, and I brought in a little old reel-to-reel tape recorder. Took that, and I brought it to his birthday party, and I said to his mom, I says, listen, we're going to put down some newspapers, and the next thing you know, we took this little tape recorder apart, hooked it up to a couple batteries, and this thing's turning. That kid's now a PhD.
Wow. There you go.
But then you scare the life out of him and say, and now let's put it back together.
Yeah.
So one of the activities we did is we started a kids net on 2 meters, and the kids ran it, and it worked for about till we had 2 girls in the 6th grade, and it worked till they went to college. And we put on Echolink, and we were getting the crowd. I regret that I didn't find a recruitment.
So, very good. Okay, and then down here, last couple.
Hat? You have your hand up? Okay.
Yeah, I'm Gary, AA6GJ, and when I was a 2nd grade teacher, I bought my group, each student had a snap circuit set, and I was trying to associate that. It had nothing to do with ham radio, but I was associating it with math because they couldn't understand why math was important. And so I was teaching them Ohm's law, power law, and all that other stuff. And these are 2nd graders, right? 2nd graders. And they were going on and on about, well, that math didn't work. There was too much. We would take measurements with ohm meters to see if the resistance was right. And they were into it. They just loved it. And then I had one student come up where we were doing some
Come on in. You're not late. You're just in time. Come on.
Doing some experiments. And he says, why is my battery heating up? And I said, look at your circuit again and tell me what kind of a circuit that is. And he says, oh, it's a short circuit. So, you know, just things like that. The kids love it.
Okay.
One more.
For young people, Natalie, NW6S. I know with a lot of young people, and everybody gets intimidated with how complicated ham radio is. And I think it's very easy to forget that at its fundamental core, it connects people. And that is something that young people are vastly passionate about. They're very in tune with each other. They want to connect with each other. So to bring it in a simple way, just give some handy talkies to some high school kids, take them to a park, have them all go in a different direction, and they'd have to be with some hams to use their call signs, but let them get a taste of what it's like to be able to connect on one of their fun activities. Show them how they can do a road trip and be able to talk to all the other 5 cars that are traveling because they're ham radio license holders. That's it.
Very good. Well said. Oh, we got one. Another one. He's got it.
Hi, I'm Ed, N8EME. I've spoken to some people here about trying to take
I'm trying to see the rest of your shirt.
Okay. We're taking our Ham Fest into more of a STEM Fest and Technology Fest, trying to bring the youths into our hobby, even if not directly amateur radio, into STEM in general. So we're looking at more of a shotgun approach than a rifle shot. Not that I don't support licensing kids, but I think while your question was fair to ask each of us, with some notable exceptions, old guys, this question of what would interest youth, we've taken on asking the youths what would interest them. Because
I actually happen to have access to some of those.
We do too. So just as much as I and the rest of us are extremely motivated to make this happen for lots of reasons, both survival of our hobby, our passion, but even just giving back to the hobby that's done so much for us. We need to go to the people that we're trying to appeal to ask them how best to appeal to them.
So, very good. In fact, there's a Ute back there. A Ute. He has no idea what we're talking about when we say Ute either. All right. So this is some of the obvious stuff. Youth clubs, local clubs, field day. Field day is an obvious place where we should be reaching out to Utes. Okay. Get a GOTA station out there, and then actually have somebody ready to work the GOTA station with the person. Okay. Don't meet the GOTA station. Well, you got to go around back where the latrine. No. Okay, have somebody there and let the, whoops, I keep doing that, stop. Scouts. Scouts is another area that the league in general has very little stuff for. Okay, and I'm actively working to change that as well. But, okay, right now there's not a whole lot of stuff there. So if you have some stuff to help with Scouts, my cards, tell me. I'd love to talk to you. And then all those great ideas you guys had. All right. So welcome youth to your club. This is Code Man. And what had happened was, see, what I did is every time a kid got a license and their call sign dropped, I gave him one of these. It's the radio that shall not be named. Okay? But I gave him one. Now I say I gave him one. Really, it's all these guys in the back, these other YouTube channel guys. I funded all of my radio activities in these classrooms by my YouTube channel and by them actively encouraging their people to send stuff for my kids. I mean, I would come home some days and there's a box of Baofangs on my porch. Sometimes there's not even a note. I don't even know who it's from. Okay, we got to Ham K, no, where was it? Huntsville. Huntsville. He has a box of radios for me in MRD. K8 MRD has a box. I mean, I went back to the school with like 40 radios. Okay? Because every time a kid got a license, they got a radio. It was theirs. It wasn't the school's. Okay? I gave it to them. They could do what they wanted with it. Well, Cody went home and climbs on the roof of his house. And I may have the story a little bit off, but I know at one point he emailed me from the roof of his house. Okay? And he wasn't able to hit the repeater with his Baofeng, Bofeng, Pofeng, however you choose to say it. Okay, so he figures out Echolink. Okay, who in here knows how to set up your phone for Echolink? Okay, that club did not. So Cody comes in, the only person that knew how to do Echolink is that dude right there, and that look on his face like, holy cow. That was the look on all of their face, because he came in and he did a presentation and he taught all these old guys how to use Echolink. Okay? And if you look at this club, they obviously welcomed, look at all these kids at this club meeting. All of them have their license. That's what our club meetings need to look like. We need to reach out to these schools and get these kids to come to the meeting. And when they come, they need to feel welcome there. They don't need their own little, like that's the kiddie table. Like at Thanksgiving when you went over, yeah. Okay. Oh, did I go over? Let them do club presentations. Be open to doing things they want to do. I say TPS, but I'm going to run out of time, so we're just going to talk about this one. And host activities with them as your primary target. A lot of times we go and we have like a build or something we want to do. And it's what all the old guys in the club want to build or what they want to do. Okay? But if you know you've got 15, or in the case of Lafayette County, Mississippi, 45 or 50 kids that have their ham radio license, okay, host something for them. Put on a fox hunt. Anybody ever been in a fox hunt? Okay, I scared the bejesus out of some people in a fox hunt when I first learned how to do it, because we swore up and down the fox was inside the kitchen of the Mexican restaurant. We knew it was there. It wasn't there. But when we came in the front door with antennas and radios, the cooks went out the back door. Okay? But have stuff like that. Builds. Okay? And be okay with them screwing stuff up. And I'm going to throw around some examples of stuff they screwed up. And I want you to look at the high quality work on these. Just pass them around. Okay? So stuff we can do with kids to help engage them. People who like being outside. POTA, Parks on the Air. That's what hooked my kid. She had her technician license, and she was good with that. Right up until we were doing a POTA activation, and she got tired of saying Kilo 5 Alpha Tango Alpha. She's like, Daddy, when can I use my call sign? I said, got to upgrade, kid. A week later, she's, boom, General. Done. She's like, that was there. Soda, if you're one of these freaky people that like to climb mountains with little bitty antennas and radios like that guy in the back, there's an option. I mean, some places have it. And just generally camping. Okay, there's a huge community of people who do overlanding and stuff like that. And these cats right here, I thought you were bringing me a cup of coffee. I was fixing to get excited. Okay, it's something they can do while they're camping. For the builders and the makers, okay, makey. I'm going to pass this one around as well. If you would, please don't lose parts, because I actually had to go back to my old classroom and borrow this.
If I had bananas, it would make a lot.
I've got a picture of that in a second. Snap circuits, was somebody over here mentioned snap circuits? Other little kits like ARRL sells their little FM receiver kit. I think it's like 15 bucks. If you're one of those little mountain climbing people and you want something that weighs like, how many ounces is this, Adam? Not much. Okay. You get a little bit of wire, and that's an antenna that he designed. Okay. And the digital modes. A lot of us old guys don't love all the digital modes. Okay? FTH, not real radio. Okay? To a kid, it is. Okay? So just because you don't love it, let the kid. I mean, when a kid can sit down and hit a button, they don't have any mic fright. It's a stinking button.
It's text messaging.
Okay? They can send a message. It's text messaging without a cell phone. Okay? And then once they get comfortable with that, then they can get into some of the other modes, GS8 call, stuff like that. Okay? But let them get over their fear of it like that. WinLink, yes, believe it or not, kids think WinLink is cool. When you're standing on a football field and you tell them to put their phone into airplane mode and then tell them to send an email. And they're like, but I'm in airplane mode. Okay, but you can still send an email with WinLink. And then online communities, Discord. Raise your hand if you're in a Discord. Okay? Yeah, okay, you see the gap there? Kids are there. That's the kids' chat room now. Okay, if you want to reach kids, they go to Discord. Okay? And then hacking radio, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So here's some pictures of some of these things. This is the snap circuits of the days of old. Who remembers those? Yeah. You had the spring, and then you stuck it in there. Yeah, okay. This is the exact same thing as this. This is just a modernized version of it that has slightly more difficult parts to swallow. Okay? It does the same thing. This is great for the classroom. Hacking radios, yes, it is a thing. That person right there looks remarkably like that person back there. Okay? You're welcome. But I was going for the screen. So, yeah, but you know, it was like, I don't remember what time it was this time. Okay, a lot of youth like computers. There's a huge number of youth who are into hacking. I put that in quotes because a lot of things that some kids think is hacking isn't. They really just pick up somebody's phone and go, I got your phone hacked. No. Okay. Many of those youth are completely unaware of amateur radio and how computers and those two can mesh together. So by you showing them that you can actually integrate amateur radio with a computer, that's all the hook you need for some of these folks. Okay, DEF CON's full of them. Those are the people that come up with new digital modes, new ways to operate, new software, all that stuff that you like, those logging software and stuff like that. They're all those computer kind of guys. Okay, beginning circuits, that makey that's making its way, well, that's a lot of makes, making its way around. That's what this is, and kids love this. You hook bananas to it and you play a piano. Yeah, isn't that awesome? You heard that? Bada bing, bada boom. You don't have one of these, do you? Which one of you two laughed? You don't have one of those? You're about to have one of those. Shh. It helps them understand circuits. You can build game controllers with your pencil lead, or graphite to be, They draw it, they hook the little leads to it, and they can control the video game that way. This is the kind of stuff that kids are going to engage with. This is what makes it fun. Somebody mentioned Elmering earlier. Elmer is a noun, and this is kind of my paraphrase definition of it, is someone who provides guidance and assistance to inexperienced or would-be hams. Would everybody kind of sort of agree that that's what we view an Elmer as being? All right, so to Elmer or not to Elmer? An Elmer should provide guidance in areas that the newcomer is interested in. This is where Elmering sometimes takes a hard left because we have our firm belief on what amateur radio is. Amateur radio is CW on 80, whatever, okay? And that's what you want to do. And that's what you're going to teach them how to do. So we need to make an effort to find Elmers who actually are willing to or know those areas that kids are interested in. If somebody comes in wanting to learn CW, by the way, I got a guy coming after you for that. Okay?
There's nothing wrong with us learning what we're trying to teach the kids.
Absolutely not. And that's, okay, that whole learning while you're teaching thing, learning together, is perfectly fine. In fact, the entire model of our Teachers Institute, that's what we do. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with getting through that stuff together. But the point is, if you want to engage youth, you have to engage youth with what they want to do. If you try to hammer something else into them that they're not into, they're just going to bail. Remember, change hobbies like I change socks. They're gone. Okay? And not all Elmering has to be in person. Believe it or not, okay, we have a group of Elmers back there in the back. We got another one here. We've got one here who, she creates her Elmers in 60-second TikToks. Okay? People are going to get Elmered in it somewhere. Okay? YouTube, TikTok. They're going to get it somewhere. Okay? And that's perfectly fine. But the point is, make sure that you're open to all of that. The better the Elmering in the club, the better your club strength is. Because people want to come back. They come back, they're going to learn something. And at the core of it, we want to learn stuff. And Elmers can be of any age. Don't discount what someone has to offer based on their age. Okay? That is my daughter at 15? 16. Okay? And none of the people in our local club had done a Parks on the Air activation, so my kid's like, well, let's go do one. And they're like, well, we can't just do that. She goes, why not? Holly Springs National Forest is right over there. And so the next club meeting, they're like, okay, fine, let's do that. So we went and we did a POTA activation. And I think old girl right here is 6, maybe 7 at the time. 7. Okay? She's actually the granddaughter of one of the club members who's like, well, I'm not into this POTA thing. But his granddaughter was. Okay? Her brother is licensed now, Marley. She told me last time I saw her she was studying, but she said that for 2 years. Okay? They ran that POTA activation for at least a couple hours. Okay? Just because somebody is younger or somebody is older doesn't disqualify them from being a good Elmer. Okay? Especially if you've got youth that are in your club that you're reaching out to. Okay? The youth are some of the best people to talk to them. Because they kind of get some of that stuff. All right, so let's build something. By this point, those high-quality kits have made most of their way around the room. Okay? And you're going to see, look at that beautiful soldering work on that. Okay? See, the way this worked was, I got these radio kits every year. When people would send like money on Patreon and stuff, like, all these YouTube people that are like, oh, well, support me on Patreon. Okay? Because, that's how they have to buy all this equipment. Okay? Well, I used all of my Patreon money and money that people would just send me to buy stuff for kids. I know because now I have to pay the taxes on that. I would buy these kits, and when I would get a couple kits that they didn't work, I saved them. So that the next year, when new kids were learning how to solder and desolder, they could practice on something that's already trashed. Okay? It didn't ruin anything new. It just ruined something old. Again. Okay? And they could practice. They would solder and desolder and solder and desolder, and they would, you know, one kid, Andrew, you'll see a thing of him, he like melted an entire like 3 feet of solder in about 8 seconds, and he's like, oh. You gotta be okay with that stuff. Okay? As soon as they can demonstrate to you that they can do a decent soldering job and it looks like a Hershey's Kiss, okay, that's when you give them their own kits and they start building theirs. So you let them practice on the junk until they can prove to you that they're ready for the goods. Kind of keeps your costs down a little bit. All right, so tension is good. You want the kids to struggle through some of this stuff. Remember, kids like doing hard stuff. So if you can get the kids to struggle through it, they're just that much more engaged. So the voltage effect by John A. List. Engaging youth is this is adapted by his, is much like flying a kite. If you have a kite with no wind, it just flops around if you're lucky to get it off the ground at all. Okay, you have to have tension in that string. Okay, to keep kids engaged, you have to have tension. There has to be challenge. It's got to be something that they're like, oh my gosh, that was hard. And then they turn the switch and it works. Oh, it works! Then the next time, guess what? What are we building this time? What are we working on this time? Okay? But we have to have that tension. You've got to have that challenge for these kids. Remember, it goes back to youth can do hard things. They like to feel successful when they accomplish difficult things, and let them have that. Remember, these kids are like 13 at this time. Okay? They're going to act silly. They're going to act stupid when something works, and you've got to be okay with that. In fact, they would wander around the school with these radios, he remembers, cranked up as loud as possible. Because half of these kids have never actually like heard an FM radio because they all do it on their phone. And they're like, look! And they're like walking around saying, look, I get different stations on this side. And all these teachers are like, what is that noise in the hall? Okay? And they're like, look what I just built. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay? Let them brag. Give them that. All right, so how do we reach them? I'm also a firm believer that the best way to get to, or the most efficient way to get to kids is through schools. Okay? I know I did it for 21 years. Okay? If you want the easiest to get to group of kids to get engaged in a hobby, you have to get to schools. The problem is, who in here has ever gone to a school and asked them to include it? How many of you made it past the front door? Okay? How many of you made it past the front door in the last 5 years? Okay? It can be a challenge because there's a lot of, you know, stuff.
We look like weird old guys.
Yes, we'll just leave it at that. Okay? But I've got tools for that stuff. We've got ways to work with that. So, like I said, I'm a firm believer in that. Be ready and willing to discuss amateur radio with teachers, administrators, students, anybody who will listen. In fact, every kid that comes by that booth over there, I'm giving them the Teachers Institute stuff saying, hey, take this to your coolest teacher and tell them to come to our Teachers Institute, which, by the way, I have a stack of them over there. We're actually going to have another Teachers Institute in October this year. Historically, we've only had 2. This year, we kind of rolled the dice, and I said, we're going to fill 3. We filled 3, and I had to turn people away, okay? Thanks to people like Josh and stuff for having me on their shows to help let people know that this is out there. For those of you who don't know what Teachers Institute is, it costs the teacher or the school $100. For $100, we put them on an airplane, we fly them to headquarters, we put them up for a week, we feed them for a week, I take them to a really bad Yard Goats minor league baseball game, although maybe not in October, and then we teach them how to teach wireless technology in the classroom. And then they leave with probably $700 or $800 worth of stuff to do it, okay? It is why this program is not bursting at the seams. I have no earthly idea other than the fact that nobody knows it's there, okay? So I'm like out proselytizing like the, you know, anyone that'll let me Zoom to them and talk to their club or whoever, yeah, that's me, okay?
One question for you, if I could, NAVOX, for ID.
For ID.
Yeah. Who should we go after? Is it administrators? Is it like a cool teacher?
Yes.
I mean, would it be beneficial to try to set an appointment with? So, like I mentioned to you out there, like we have a tech center right close to my house. And that's where kids of this type, what I think, would gravitate towards. Like, would it be advantageous to try to set an appointment with that person?
Probably. So I have a strategy.
Like on behalf of my club to say, hey, I'm with this.
Yeah, now it is, I will tell you, it is much easier if you have a teacher who's willing to help you get that appointment. Okay? But if not, here's the magic trick. And I'm going to skip a slide, then go back. That's your magic trick right there. Okay? The ARRL Foundation, and in the last several years, the ARDC. So I'm going to tell you now. ARDC, they've got a booth in there somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is because I've only been here like 3 hours. Okay? But when you find it, you need to go thank them because this year we are giving away $900,000 in college scholarships to hams. And the vast majority of that money is coming from ARDC. Okay? So here's what I do. I print this sheet out. As soon as they award the next round of grants, I'll do the same thing. And I'm going to go through and I highlight all these dollar amounts. Okay, and this is actually a sheet. I've got a Google Drive folder. I share the whole thing with you. You can download it, print it. If you don't have ink, I'll mail it to you. Okay, I don't care. You're going to leave this on their desk with all this other literature that is there. You're going to leave that on the principal's desk because while principals, they have a lot on their plate. They got testing, they got curriculum, they got all this stuff. But at the end of the day, money talks. Okay, and when you can say, look, Mr. Chisholm, who happened to be my last principal, $25,000 scholarships. There's 6 of those there. That's a lot of cash. Oh, wait, look, Mr. Chisholm. There are no scholarship dollars that went to the state of Mississippi last year. Huh. How can we change that? I got a way.
Can I clarify? You said $900,000. Was that in 1 year?
That's this year. This year. In fact, any day now, they're going to announce who those scholarships are going to.
K9OSV.
Don't be disappointed you have to give your call sign, guys.
Not difficult application forms.
No, my daughter just went through the whole process.
Not difficult at all.
What'd you get? What was it for?
I got a scholarship, one from the foundation, and then last year I received one of the $5,000 ARDC scholarships.
Boom. And you know what? All he had to do for this, he had to fill out this little form on Kaleidoscope. Okay, get a couple people to upload a reference, and they called him up and they said, hey, tell me what you like about the hobby. I mean, maybe not those exact words, but he had to be able to talk about something that he liked with the hobby. That's it! They had to have a license, okay? This year, they're talking, I don't know exactly how many, but they're talking about they're giving away 20 of these 25 grand scholarships, okay? That will get these people to let you in the door. Okay, and this is the other stuff. This is the brochure for the Teachers Institute. I have some of those up there. Okay, this is like a little bullet point sheet that I made. I can't take credit for the artistic ability. That's Kathleen because I just gave her what to put in the bullets. Okay, because if it was mine, it would be like Stickman. But these are the bullet points you want to make sure you talk about with the principal. I send one of those out there with this packet so that you don't miss any of the high points. I give them that to leave with it so that when you leave, or when you walk out the door, they can look at it and say, oh, okay, so these are the things that it does. So that when they go to their teachers, they're like, hey, look, we've got this staff development. They're going to fly you to Connecticut in October, where apparently they call it peeping, where they like look at leaves. I don't get it, but maybe I will next year. I don't know. Okay, but the weather's like beautiful up there. Okay, for $100, and they come back with like $800 or $900 worth of stuff or whatever it is, and we tell them how to apply for a grant, so that they can get a complete station in their classroom. Don't know how to make it a whole lot better than that. Follow up and support. So this is kind of just like a new ham who goes unsupported and unengaged slips away, so will schools and so will clubs. If they get something going and they never hear back from you, it's going to die. So I'm just going to tell you, teachers are completely and totally overwhelmed from August until May. Okay, regardless of what you believe, I'm just telling you, after 21 years, from August until May, I was drinking a few pots of coffee a day, okay? Because that's just the way it rolls. So they might forget to call you, so go call them. Stop by. Visit their church, whatever it is, okay? But be there and offer to be their support. Offer to help them with stuff. Remember, the Teachers Institute, we don't require them to be licensed for their first institute. I don't care. I'm going to hook them when they get there, okay? Just get them to me, okay? But they may not know all these little things like how to program a Baofeng. Go program their radio for them. They'll love you. they'll probably give you cookies. Okay? I'm just saying. Okay, these little dudes can be a beast, especially if you don't like chirp them. Try to program one of those by hand. And invite not just the staff, but students to amateur radio activities in the air. So students, staff, principals, school board members. School board members are great. You only need one. Once you get one, you got them.
W2GIO. There's a school, a high-end grade school down in Westchester in New York. And what they do in this school is the kids learn to fix their own cell phones. And they also teach other kids to do the same thing.
There's like a great little Arduino kit that's like a cell phone that they can build a...
The point was that they're actually allowing these kids to do this in the school. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, you can get in the door, and once you get in the door, you're solid. Okay, once you're there, you're good. Because, you know, like my old principal, I was like, yeah, well, you know, you mind? I had to beg him to get this other teacher to take my class. He wanted it, but he's like, well, he's already teaching. They're like, okay, it's got to be somebody, otherwise the program goes away. And remember, here's that scholarship paper. They got to be active. Okay. All right, so discussion, questions, share what's worked, ideas, and quickly, how can you help? So if you're not a league member, I'm just going to ask you, I'll be blunt, please join, because that's what pays me to have this stuff produced, to go out to these schools and get more kids. Okay? Support the education and technology program if you're one of these people that likes to donate for tax purposes or just because it gives you that warm fuzzy. Okay, little short lady over there in the development area, Melissa Stemmer, she'll be more than glad to show you ways that you can help support us getting more kids on the air. Okay, and then most importantly, get out there and spread the word. Talk to teachers, talk to people. Okay, engage the kids. So who has questions? Well, we've got a bunch of ideas that work. Let's start with questions first.
Where can I find you after this?
At the ARRL booth complex. I'll be sweating by then because it's hot in there, and I'm going to need another coffee or two.
Presentation material going to be available later, anywhere?
Probably not in its entirety.
Radio crash course. No, probably.
So, now, yeah,
I likely will be putting.
Yes, the actual speech, the Sermon on the Mount, yes, will be on Josh's channel.
Great.
Okay, I thought you meant the slides. No, the slides won't. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in really quickly because I know I'm running out of time. Okay, but for your little kids and even your middle school kids, picture books work wonders. Anybody ever read that book? I'll have it at the booth. Come look at it. This one's been with me for a long time. Okay, it's no longer in print. You can still get it on eBay. Okay, in fact, we're in talks with a publisher right now to publish a book series, my wife and I, ham radio fiction. Am I down to 3 minutes? Is that my 3-minute timer?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm down to 3 minutes. Any other questions? Questions?
Hold the book up again.
Radio Rescue, baby. You have to eBay them now. They're not in publication. I do have my cards up here. If you want a card, please come get it. And I kid you not, this is not the education department of old. If you call, you will get a phone call back. It may be a few days because a lot of people tend to call nowadays. Ever since I started saying that, the phone doesn't stop ringing. Okay, but you will get a call back or an email back. Okay, and anything that I can do to help you get into schools or help support getting youth on the air, I will literally bend over backwards to make it happen. Any other questions, answers, theory? All right, if you have any more questions or any ideas, I will be at the ARRL booth because I don't even know who's coming after me, but they're kind of kicking us out. So, thank you.